All right. I'm so excited for this podcast episode today. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm just getting so excited. So, and you'll know why in a second when you hear Naomi talk, because she's got an amazing accent and her energy and her vibe is just incredible. So, thank you so much for being here today, Naomi.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to
Yes.
be here.
Good, good. So let me introduce you to my listeners. So Naomi Stonier, she is a relationship coach and she helps ambitious women have better relationships with all the people in their life, not just their intimate relationships. Whew, that is like a lot to dive into right there, my friend. That is incredible. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that. Like, tell us to get started. Like, tell us a little bit about your journey to even becoming a relationship coach. Like, how did that start for you?
Yeah, well, for so many of us, it's a path that I walked myself. So I experienced dysfunctional relationships from childhood onwards. And I just took those forward with me, and that showed up in every area of my life. So I didn't do well at school. I struggled in jobs. I had low grade relationships and friendships. And it really, what then I went into, I was lucky enough to meet my husband, but then we experienced infertility, and I would just move in a very disempowering way through every experience. And I was in a lot of expectation. I lived on the emotional roller coaster. It was exhausting. And I was constantly making decisions based on trying to change or avoid my emotions. So, for instance, I traveled continuously for years, and every time life got difficult, I would just move. And it was such a great example of the terrible decisions we make when we're trying to avoid or change our emotions. And then when I went into my infertility journey, we were so lucky to have a beautiful daughter, but my blueprint, and everybody has one, was a big family. And I needed a big family. So I would always get love. I would feel very significant. I would feel really needed. And so even though we were lucky enough to have a lovely daughter, I had to have more. And so here again is this decision making from these unclear places, from not a healthy place. And I just did round after round of fertility treatment to the point where it really nearly broke us financially, physically, emotionally. But that turned out to be my gift. I've been able to reframe the meaning of this experience to a gift, because it was a moment where I had to stop and go, okay, something's not right here. Life is so difficult for me, no matter what I try. And I discovered relationship coaching, and it was a very simple, it is very simple. It may not be easy, but it is very simple to understand how I was creating my experience.
Yeah.
And it was just as simple as understanding other people can't create my emotions. I was taught how I was creating them and why I was going to certain ones again and again, even when it didn't feel good. And knowing the work that you do, Melissa, when we are mums and we're over functioning and we're doing everything for everyone and we just want a bit of help and support and we can't understand why we don't get it. I had to go, that's where I was, and I had to go on this journey to understand how I was creating this. And then that was the way I got my control back over my life, I stopped draining time and energy to the emotional roller coaster. And yeah, I have a very different life now.
Okay, well, I just had like 30 questions pop into my head, and I think I just lost them all because I'm like, oh, wait, there's another one. Oh, wait, there's another one. Oh, wait, there's another one that I need to ask you.
There's
But
no pause,
yeah,
no opportunity to ask it.
no, but it's amazing because I am so curious too to understand that like you were able to work through that and moms feeling like they're over functioning and doing all the things. How do you help moms, or what kind of advice do you have for the moms out there that are feeling that way or living in the same emotion over and over? Like, how do you
Yes.
get out of that? It could,
Yeah.
you said it's not easy, but it's a little bit of work, but is it easy? And is it something that they can do? Like, how do they do that? Naomi.
It, the very first step for me was discovering that other people can't create my emotions. It was a journey that I had to go on. We go to one of two places, either that feels very difficult. So I had a very dysfunctional relationship in my life that I spun in very disempowering emotions in. And if someone had told me way back, this person isn't creating your emotions, I would have got very angry about that. I would have really resisted that. And I would say, if that's where you are, if someone, it feels someone is being very unfair to you, and I'm saying to you, they're not creating your emotions. What I ask people to do is take a look at what comes up. If that's a very difficult thought for you, take a look at what comes up, write a list. And if that list is all about them, you want to get really curious about that, because if it's all their fault, it's the worst place to be, because we are powerless to change them. And for me, and then the other place we go, or the other people are, yes, of course, other people can't create my emotions. This is the other place we go. It makes total sense. I'm an adult, I'm responsible for myself. But what happens is, in the moment, we forget it, don't we? It's easy now in this rational, calm moment to say, yes, other people can't create my emotions. But in the moment, it's just a look, a sigh, the way someone shuts a cupboard door, you can go woof, can't you?
So
And so,
true.
yeah. And when we've been, we have decades of this with our family members. And that's why just a little moment can be so difficult. And so what I do is I teach people how you are creating your emotions. So we break it down. It's very simple. And then I teach people, I call it doing nothing. So you, in the moment, you do nothing. And actually what you do is a lot, because you drop into awareness. Okay, my body's filled with tension. What's going on? Oh, there's a thought. What am I believing in the moment? So I teach people to break it down, to take your focus off the other person and bring it onto yourself and go, okay, what is happening in me? And you can and what I teach people to do is to start small, not with the most difficult relationship in your life, but with the weather, with the traffic jam, when you miss the train, those small moments, like when someone pushes in front of you in the shop. Watch yourself and you start to learn the patterns you're running, and it gives you the ability to start to pause in the moment. And so for me, going into experiences with a really, in a very difficult relationship, I would go into these experiences really paying attention to myself. I would just take the focus off them, because it used to be all on, oh my God, are they going to start? Are they going to start saying something? What are they going to do? What are they going to say? And I had no control over the situation. When I brought it onto myself, I was turned investigator, turned detective, watched myself, and then I got to learn what was happening. That gave me control, and they didn't change at all. They carried on being their same old difficult self. I learned to be able to handle my emotions around that, and their ability to affect me just dropped from 1,000% to 10%. And it's a very empowering experience. It gives you a lot of confidence when someone can carry on being their same old difficult self, and you are are much less affected. And from this place, we put in our boundaries. We start making clear and confident decisions, and we're actually able to look after ourselves and stand up for ourselves in a much more effective way, with much less drama and energy drain and that sort of thing.
Oh my, that is
Does that answer your question?
Yes, because it's like, okay, that might have covered like a couple of questions. No, but I'm just so curious about that because it is, I love the fact of writing down, when you're in that emotion too, thinking, well, what am I dropping into and what am I thinking about? And if it's all about the other person, it's like, you're right, you can't change the other person, you can change yourself and how you react in that situation and how you show up in the situation. And so I've been in those situations before too, where you're like, oh, here we go. Like, what's going to happen now? You're kind of like putting your boxing gloves on and you're like, okay, what do you got for me? I'm ready this time. Versus how can I change the situation from the way that it's always been, especially when I leave feeling worse than when I showed up.
Yeah. And this is how we repeat the experience, because we take negative bias about each other. Even in the best relationships, we take negative bias into the experience. So the brain is waiting for the story to play out, that always has. And that's why the look, the tone, the subtle things, the brain goes, okay, here we go. They're going to do it. And we predict the story, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's with family, we all regress. And it can be so frustrating. We always say to ourselves, this time I won't let them get to me. Yeah.
Are you reading my mind? Like, did you read my journal?
Yeah. And then the shame and the judgment when we have the same experience again, which is obviously very uncomfortable. So our brain wants to outsource that, and it wants to blame them. It's not my fault. And then we shift into blame. Again, a very disempowering place to be.
Yeah. So you work with, do you work with a lot of women? Do you work with men? Is it mainly women?
I work with men and women.
Yeah. So do you do a lot with working, or do you hear a lot, like if moms come in like with their kids, like build that relationship with their kids? Cause I'm in that, I feel like right now, I have a couple boys that are at home, and so they are teenage years. And so I had no idea the shift that would happen from elementary to teenage. I thought the hardest years were like the toddler phase.
Oh
And I'm
God, I
like, that
know.
was kind of feeling like a piece of cake to
Yeah.
where I am now, where I feel like that separation from my kids because they don't want to be with me like they did before in the same situations. And so, and then there's that constant, like they're trying to figure out who they are. Like, I'm like, but wait, you're this person. I know who you are. And so it's been interesting for me as a mother to try to have to figure out how to transition from having, the kids that want to hug you and love you and be around you and snuggle and watch TV and do things with you, to almost like the complete opposite. That's been hard.
Very painful, isn't it? It's very painful. And that you've got the also what you have to bring into this is masculine and feminine energy. Feminine energy feels and sees everything. Masculine energy, one thing at a time. It compartmentalizes, and it must be able to shut down and switch off. It must be able to, this is why, and we have to watch out about our social conditioning around this. And this isn't about men and women. It can apply to same-sex marriages as well. You want to have that masculine and feminine. You need that polarity to have the dance of the energies in relationships. But for you, the boys will just, I imagine, just want to shut off and switch off and check out and not communicate. Do you have that sort of thing? Yeah. And for feminine energy, that's very painful, because feminine energy, you know, this is why feminine energy has such intense friendships, because, you know, you go deep into it, you talk about everything. And masculine energy just doesn't want to do that. And so you've got two boys there turning into, I imagine, into their masculine energy. And so now you're in are you in a house with all masculine energy? Yeah.
So
And
I'm the only female other than my cat.
yeah, yeah. And that's you know, really giving yourself permission to find that difficult and finding ways around it. And so not making each other wrong for, you know, I coach men who are in a completely feminine energy household, and it can be really, really tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, you know, I know that there's so many moms listening that have younger kids. We have empty nesters that listen,
Yeah.
you know, mothers that have newborns that are listening, you know, people that listen that don't have kids as well. But I do know that that relationship for me, I think that has always been one of the most important relationships for me to
Yes.
want to have and to foster. And, you know, the things that I'm saying, I want to reflect back that, like, okay, they can say these things and they can be powerful and their mindset is strong. And so that's where I find that I struggle, because I'm just like, okay, is my mindset strong right now?
Yeah. But, you know, children are such an easy source of love. Okay, so it's this easy source of unconditional love. And that is why so many couples survive the young children years, and then when the kids get to teenage years, couples split up, because when we don't pay attention and make sure we're getting, love is so scary that we so often settle for connection. Everybody just settles for connection because it's, love is too scary for most of us. So we get that need met from the kids. Then the kids turn into teenagers, don't want to know us, go off and live their own lives. And then we look at each other and go, oh dear, we don't have a connection. But you don't know it until that easy source of love is taken away. So of course I'm not saying that's happening to you, but just know the pain you feel of that. You know, the love is, while the kids are, because they have to develop in opposition to us, don't they? Literally, they have to like distance to become adults. That love goes away, and it is so painful. But know that it's gonna, you know, for all you need to do is hold on, hang on, and it's going to transform into a new connection that's going to be lovely.
Oh no, I know it is. It's just, you know, that's just, you know, where we are, and that's kind of where I am, you know, as a mom, like in that
I think it's the toughest time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I've been talking to people too that are like empty nesters. So I've had like some empty nesters on the show and kind of talked about that as well. But it's just this weird, it's just weird phase, you know,
Yeah.
living in the same home, but they're also different.
Yes.
It's like you just are trying to figure it out, and you don't want to tiptoe, and then it's like setting boundaries and
Yeah.
rules, and then but not trying to be too strict. And
Yeah.
you know, it's that fine line of like, how does this
I
all work?
don't think there is a line. I think there is no right way. Here, this is, I always say this, there is no one proven parenting method. They have done so much research on it, because obviously think of the money you could make. They cannot find a parenting method that is conclusively works. The children of awful parents go on to do great things, and the children of brilliant parents go on to do awful things. So just all you could do is the best you can.
No, it's so true. And so I appreciate you. Thank you for that little coaching session. I'm like, did you just coach me? But it is like that emotion, like in that moment,
Yeah,
as a
so
parent, mom,
difficult.
you feel like you're doing it all. You're doing your best after the last 2 years of everyone being at home, schools at home, works at home, can't get out of the house. That struggle has been even more real of, okay, well, I just feel like I snap a little bit more because I feel like we've been together so much that I need some separation.
Yeah. And just that permission to find it difficult. And and also not we want to be perfect, and actually that's much worse for the kids. Lose it, have times when you lose it, and just own it. And you know this, don't you, Melissa? And move on. That's a much better lesson for a child than a parent who's always in control. So I'm always teaching my clients who have children, give yourself a break, allow yourself to find it really difficult.
So when you were talking earlier about like the emotions that you keep going back to like over and over and over again,
Yeah.
is that what you were talking about when you were talking about when you have those emotions over and over again, to kind of stop and pause, write it down, see where you are, and then start focusing on yourself? Is that method of doing that? When, because I feel like sometimes I want to be good and I start the day and I'm like, okay, this is
Yeah.
I just meditated, and then like midday way through the day, you're exhausted, decision fatigue, all the things that you still have left to do on your list. Am I going to get it all done? Cooking dinner, and then you just get tired. And so
Yeah.
do you have any tips for that, or
I
any?
absolutely do, because what we want to ask ourselves, when no matter how hard we try, we can't solve the problem, it's really time to get curious. So my experience with overwhelm was that no matter how often I changed the things outside of me, I was still overwhelmed. So I would change jobs, I would change my hours, I would change where we lived, I would change, or I would get a cleaner, I would do all these things. I was still overwhelmed. And so through coaching, I was able to understand that it was meeting my needs. And so we must meet our needs one way or another. And if we don't meet our needs in ways that serve us, we'll meet our needs in ways that don't serve us. And so for me, I was able to finally get a handle on overwhelm when I understood how it was meeting my needs. And for me, so here's how I'll run you through how it's meeting my needs. It was a very familiar place to be. I knew exactly how to get overwhelmed. I could do it like that in a minute. And so there's your certainty. We must meet the need for certainty. It's a basic human need. You think about it, you must know you can be safe, that you can have a roof over your head, that you can have food on the table. You must meet that need. So the familiarity, that gives us certainty. So I was very familiar with that state. But then too much certainty and we get bored. So we must have uncertainty in our life, which will make more sense if I say variety.
Yeah.
So we all say we love surprise, we love adventure, we love variety, but the variety we don't like, we call problems. Yeah. So one way or another, too much certainty and we get bored. So we must have variety. Variety makes us feel alive. But if you don't get good quality forms of variety, you'll go to bad forms in the form of problems. So the roller coaster of overwhelm gave me loads of variety. Can you imagine, the stress and the anxiety of the to-do list and the pressure. And then, of course, I would tip into resentment. I would let anger. Whose fault was it that I had so much to do? So, can you see that roller coaster? And of course, then the need for significance. We must know we matter. We must feel needed. And how can we feel important and needed? By being too busy. Can't we? The busyness hierarchy. The busier we are, the more important we are. So there, I had a lot of significance by taking on other people's problems, jumping in and dealing with everything. Then I was always needed. And so this is how I would attract it in. So I wouldn't even realize I was doing it. I would just automatically assume responsibility for everything. And then the fourth need, the need for love and connection. It took me a long time to get this one. But actually, what was happening is one, I could feel very sorry for myself because I had so much to do and I was left dealing with everything. So there's a form of connection with myself, feeling pity for myself. But also, it was only when I got so overwhelmed that I gave myself permission to stop. So I would have to crash, I would have to burn out, I'd have to get sick. Then I would get into bed and I would watch Netflix and eat ice cream and connect with myself. So can you imagine, what a great way to meet all my needs. So, I could just whip up a bit of overwhelm. And so getting really conscious and aware of how I was creating it was how I finally cracked it. And can you imagine the effect on my relationships when I was like this tornado? People just distanced themselves from me. I was always complaining I wasn't getting enough help. And of course, how difficult to help someone who must do everything, to meet all these needs. No wonder I couldn't work in partnership with my husband. And, at work, I would seem to get left with everything.
Yeah. I feel that a lot, like everything that you were saying, because I have definitely before, and having this invisible cloak of like, oh, just give it all to me because I can handle it all.
Yeah.
And then I call it like dropping the supermom facade, because when my
Yeah.
kids were, I literally was like, oh, people are like, you're the supermom, like you do it all and you do it so effortlessly. But then at home, I would be like the crazy. You said I'd be whipping everything up, or I'd be like in the shower or in bed crying because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm falling apart. And why is no coming to help me? Well, because you can do it all, right? So no one's
Yeah.
they can help because you look like you got your shit together.
Yeah. And we love it, don't we, until we drop a ball and then it just all comes tumbling down. It's really fun to be at doing everything, isn't it? But really it's over functioning and it's exhausting. And I teach my clients to switch into solution creation, which is it's because what we're doing is we're using over functioning as a way of managing our emotions. It's the illusion of control, isn't it? And so solution creation is about being in very uncomfortable emotions and allowing them, and allowing the solution to come to you, creating space for others to step in. Sometimes when we do nothing, a solution just happens, doesn't it? But if we never give it that moment and we just leap into action, and often, for lots of my clients like me, they may have had dysfunctional childhoods and learned to overdo and over control. It's like a way of creating safety for yourself. If you can't rely on anyone, you always have to make sure you're on top of everything.
I think, yeah, I feel that just, if you feel like you can't rely on people or they can't do a good,
it's not safe. Yeah.
You're just like, but they can. And why does it have to be my way? Like it doesn't have to. So it is that form of control because you feel safe in the control.
Yeah. And it's really awful for our relationships. It really is, in an intimate relationship, if you can't allow them to help and be part of what's going on, it tanks the passion. For starters, there is no passion when we're over functioning in this way, and it just erodes the foundation when you're feeling very resentful towards your partner because they're not helping you, and you've got this story about why don't they help. And it's just, no matter when you're trying to communicate and get that help, here is a clue for everybody listening. If no matter how many times you ask, your message isn't landing, you want to get really curious about that, because the way you're communicating isn't working, and we need to just change it up, and we need to get curious about it. Curiosity is the antidote.
I know. I was like, what do you mean? Like change the way you're asking. So if I keep asking, like, I need help with the house, maybe they don't, because what they think is like, well, it's fine to leave the dishes in the sink, or it's fine to, who cares about the clothes that are left out or the shoes in the wrong place.
Yes.
Being specific. Is that what you mean about asking?
No, I mean about the energy that we communicate in. So if you are communicating in the emotions of shame and blame and guilt, if you're shaming and blaming, your communication won't land. And so obviously we've all got different standards, haven't we? But often if we are expecting things to be done in a certain way, and then, you know, our loved ones will get involved, but then when they haven't done it right, they just give up, don't they? So I mean, you know, an example is the way we give love. So we will often complain that our partners aren't loving, and so when we are constantly giving love in our language and not theirs, that person won't feel love. So you'll say, I'm so loving to them, but I never get anything back. It may well be that you're giving love on your terms and they don't feel love. So for me, for instance, you know, I'm a very tactile person, but my husband isn't. So I would constantly be hugging him, but that he doesn't actually feel loved that way. So can you imagine, I'm constantly trying to give him love in my language instead of his. So I had to change it up and figure out what his language was and start speaking it. And then that way I could get some reciprocation. Yes, that's a bit of a different example, but it's about working out how, instead of trying all the time to communicate the way you do, if they do not receive the message that way, they are literally not going to hear you. You can stand in front of them and say it to them, and they literally will not receive it. This is why we are so perplexed. And you have to figure out how they receive and start speaking their language.
My gosh, this has been such a great conversation. Oh my goodness. Like, you have dropped so many nuggets and just a lot to go back and think on. So I hope that the moms and the women that are listening are just taking note of, you know, something that they could use in their daily life, or like you said, just something small. Like, so if you're driving right now and listening, like, and you're in a traffic jam, or somebody just pulled you, you know, cut in front of you, or whatever it is, like noticing, just like Naomi said, like that situation, or why did you get upset? It probably had nothing to do with the person cutting you off. It was probably something maybe that happened earlier, or you're frustrated about something else, or all those other feelings that you've had going on throughout the day. So I think taking notice and being curious are just great words, you know,
it takes so much pressure off. When we go to curiosity, it takes a lot of the pressure off what you're feeling.
Yeah, no,
Takes the intensity out of it.
Right. Yeah. Cause I think, yeah, intense emotions and things like that. I know not everybody's like that, but, you know, it can get like that sometimes in like the heat of the moment. And you're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, what is that? And then you immediately want to be like, take it all back.
Yeah. And then we go into shame and judgment. Yeah. We have so many feelings about our feelings. We layer it up. It can just be so tiring.
Yeah, no, I love that. Is there anything that you like haven't shared, or anything like that that you feel is just like on your heart, that we haven't talked about, that you feel be really beneficial for the moms that are listening out there?
Well, I have a really simple free download, which is the difference between problem solving and solution creation. And it is such a game changer. It's such a simple shift to move from problem solving, over functioning, all the things, to solution creation. And it's a really simple download, and people can go to my website plumocoaching.com to get a copy of it. And that is, it's just so simple, and it changes everything.
No, I love that. And I can include that in the show notes too. Is that the best way for people to find you? Is your website,
Yeah.
or how do you get connected with you?
Yeah, Plumo Coaching, PLUMO coaching.com. You can sign up for my weekly email. I've got such simple tools and techniques that I share every week to help you make the simple shift to create better relationships without the other person doing anything. I have masterclass dates on there, free downloads. So, and you can book a one-to-one chat with me. I do a 1-hour consult call. I take you through some really simple exercises, gives you a really clear idea of how relationship coaching works. So you can do all of that on my website.
Oh, I love that. Okay, my last question for you before we jump off is, as women, we tend to not celebrate ourselves enough. So we cheerlead for everyone else and, or the rah-rah for everyone, but we don't do that for ourselves. So I would love to know, Naomi, what is something that you love about yourself right now?
Oh my goodness, you have just hit the nail on the head. The ability to celebrate has changed my entire life. I now celebrate every single tiny thing I do. And so I mean, God, I'm sitting in the euphoria of giving a talk in person this morning that went so amazingly well. But my biggest celebration at the moment is I'm in a never-ending house sale, and it's on the last legs of trying to complete now. But it's going on and on for weeks. And the most intense emotions I've experienced about this, Melissa, you wouldn't believe. And back in the day, I would have been running around trying to control everything I can't control, blaming everybody, shouting at everybody, phone calls, emails, do, push. And just this last week, I've just sat in the moments of really intense emotion. I have no control. It's the most frustrating situation. And being able to just allow that and process it and ride it and just create perspective and say, I can just get on with my day. I'm just going to sit in this very painful moment for 5 minutes, and it subsides, and then I just get on with my day. Melissa, just feels like the biggest achievement of my life. It's my life's work. So that's what I'm celebrating.
Good. Oh, I love that. I'm glad that I was able to ask that. And then
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share that.
absolutely. This has been fabulous. And I know that the women that are listening are going to get so much from this. And hopefully they will go find out more information about you. Your energy, your information, everything is just so great. And I'm sure that you are just changing lives every single day. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Absolutely my pleasure, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you.